My name is Maddie Meulemans, and I'm in family diversity, and I'm doing a project on how mental health affects domestic violence. Could you please introduce yourself and let me know how long you've had experience with domestic violence patients?
Yes, I am Jennifer Gurski. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a certified addiction specialist. I have been a therapist for about 23 years, and I've been working with domestic violence patients in different ways, but most recently, I have been working for the Department of Defense, working in their family advocacy program, working with domestic violence and child abuse in the military.
Sounds good. So, how would you define the following terms, domestic violence and mental health disorders?
Um, Sometimes the two overlap, but a mental health disorder is when somebody has symptoms of different issues. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be hearing things, seeing things that aren't there, it could be mood disturbances. Um, so mental health is trying to assist somebody who is in an unhealthy mental place, behaviors and emotions, and getting them to a more healthy place. There are diagnoses that go through that go with that. That define all of those symptoms into different areas, which are found in the DSM, which is our diagnostic manual we use to come up with diagnoses, appropriate diagnoses. Domestic violence can be a product of mental health issues. Someone with mental health problems could become a domestic violence perpetrator or be involved in domestic violence situation as a person who is being violated, um, and continues to possibly stay in a relationship because of their mental health disorders. So they can go hand in hand, but domestic violence and mental health are um, two distinct things that go together.
Okay. So why do statistics show that mental health disorders contribute to domestic violence?
Well, if someone has a a mental health disorder that they are not managing, and that could be through therapy, that could be through medication management, or both. Um, and if a person's mental health is not managed, that could make them a higher risk for um, being involved in a domestic violence situation with a spouse or an intimate partner. Uh, so unmanaged mental health would be a problem to contribute to domestic violence.
Okay. Are mental health disorders more common in men or women? In our textbook, it states that mental health and domestic violence can occur most commonly by men, but it also can be stigmatized that it is most common in men. Um, what is the case for this?
That's a good question. And off of the top of my head, I can't give you statistics. Um, but in my experience, domestic violence perpetrators are oftentimes men, but definitely there are women perpetrators as well.
Mhm.
And domestic violence also happens with other populations like the LBG community, where it's a same-sex marriage or intimate partner situation, and also in our teens. Um, and so those are populations that we also have to monitor what's going on when we're talking about violence within relationships. Um, so I think the first part of your question, was, are mental health disorders more common in men or women? I think that depends on the disorder. Some mental health diagnoses we tend to find a little bit more prevalent in men, others more prevalent in women. It depends on the diagnosis. So I don't have an exact answer to that. But I think I answered your other question.
Yeah.
That, yeah, it's mostly men. In my experience of working within the military, most of the perpetrators have been men, but I think women being identified as perpetrators is being more looked at and getting reported more, because I think more men are starting to report, where at one time I think it was frowned upon because men were supposed to be strong and macho, or whatever, that they wouldn't report. And I think more men are starting to report.
So what services do they provide to someone who is experiencing like a domestic violence situation?
Well, for me, working with the Department of Defense, working on military installations, the military has a lot of different services available to them. In the US and our general population of people, there is also a plethora of services. So there's, domestic violence hotlines. We always want people to call 911 if it gets serious to a point, that we have an emergency situation that needs police and or ambulance, because we definitely want to prevent a death, which oftentimes these things do end in a death of someone. Different counties, different cities, different states have all kinds of services. But there are, I believe there's national hotlines as well, but I would have to kind of Google what some of those phone numbers, and I can get that for you as well if you want.
Yeah. So as for the services that you mentioned, are any of them free for people who are experiencing domestic violence if they don't have like financial support for getting help?
No, that's an excellent question. There are free services. Again, I would have to look up, what the services are. Again, with the population that I was working with the Department of Defense, those services are all free to people who are beneficiaries of the military. Again, in just your regular population, like a lot of times that, the phone numbers, the 800 numbers and things are free. Shelters are often free or low cost to help people get out of domestic violence situations.
What would you say is like the first step for a victim of domestic violence to get help?
Is reaching out, requesting some help. If it's a family member, a friend, a support, police, clergy, anyone, ask for help. At the same time, and as important is coming up with a safety plan, a plan to get out of your domestic violence situation, especially if you have children and pets to protect as well. So to have a safety plan, that would be having a phone number hidden in a lipstick case or something. Having a number of phone numbers available, having a place that where you can go, having a little bit of money, having a go bag that's got your medication, a phone charger, a change of clothes, maybe a little bit of food. If you have babies, a diaper bag that's ready to go. It's all part of safety planning. And if you call the police or you go to a clergy, or you call a hotline number or domestic violence shelter, reaching out to a social worker in a hospital, any of those people could help you safety plan or help people safety plan.
Yeah, those are some really good ideas. As for like the domestic violence perpetrators that like cause the domestic violence situation for the victim, once they are caught and they end up in like a facility, um, is it common for them to get the help needed for a mental disorder and get on medication, or do they tend to get in a facility, possibly get out, and then end up hurting others again?
I mean, I think it's a little of both, and it depends on the severity. Unfortunately, a lot of people get hand slapped for this. Um, and um, and then they'll come back and murder
Mhm,
the victim. Um, and but can a person that's been involved with
mhm,
domestic violence as a perpetrator get help? It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go on medication, because
mhm.
again, mental
Yeah.
health issue and domestic violence often go hand in hand. But if you commit domestic violence, does that necessarily mean you have a mental health disorder? Not always,
Mhm,
but often.
mhm,
So, um, definitely medication, therapy definitely can help if the person wants the help. Um, perpetrators, people that are perpetrate in domestic violence, and especially if they've been doing it a long time, they're manipulating, and they can manipulate their way through a mandated anger management program, um, do what they need to do, get out and turn around and violate someone again and kill someone. So I think it's just depends on how much that person identifies that they have a problem and then
mhm,
wants to fix that problem.
mhm,
Because domestic violence, that's a choice. It's not, well, I was drunk.
mhm,
Um, I had alcohol. I have a mental health disorder, so that's what made me do it. And when you lift your hand to someone else, or use a weapon of some sort or kill someone
mhm.
in a domestic violence situation, that is a choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just have to get the people to realize that they made that choice, and now they need to choose that they don't want to do that anymore.
Mhm. What would you say are signs that you watch out for, or that other people like in the community should be watching out for like their friends or family that could possibly be in a domestic violence situation, or we may feel that someone is in that situation, but we're not quite sure. What are like the signs and symptoms we should be looking out for?
And that's a really good question. And it's just really kind of knowing your friends or knowing your family. And if they just seem really different, if you're seeing, of course, the obvious, if you're seeing bruises, if you're seeing clumps of hair missing, if you're, and they're hurt often and they're making excuses. Oh, I fell again. Oh, no, he just kind of hit me, or she just sort of did this, but she would never do it again. She loves me, or he loves me, and making excuses and enabling the behavior because the victim is afraid to leave, and is vulnerable. Um, and so, as an outsider, you might not know the person that well, but it's
Mhm,
just, it doesn't feel right to you. That bruise looks like a handprint, or, I'm just not sure. It
mhm,
depends on the environment. If you're
yeah,
at work, you can go to a supervisor. If you're at, um, school, you can go to a counselor, a teacher. Um, you know, uh, you can, depending on your relationship with the person, or if you feel that you're able to just ask them, are you okay?
mhm,
Do you need some help? Um, I'm here if you need it.
mhm,
But we can't make people leave these situations.
mhm.
We just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. but
When,
looking for like changes in their behavior. It's not always the bruise.
yeah.
You know, it's they're making excuses not to go out anymore because within domestic violence, the person perpetrating isn't just physically hurting you and that's it. They're gaslighting, they're manipulating, they're trying to make you the victim feel like you're the crazy one. And so they hide your keys, they do something to your phone. They threaten to hurt a pet or a child or someone that's close to you. And so you're afraid to leave that situation and report what's going on. And so, the victim may start being very depressed, start giving excuses for not going out with the girlfriends or the guy friends anymore or whatever. So just changes of behavior. If you've got that gut feeling, I say it's always better to be safe than, err on the side of safety. So sometimes you just have to be blunt and ask, are you okay?
Yeah, so when you just said like to ask and say, "Are you okay?" Would you say that it is okay to ask even if it seems the person is too scared to report to someone that they are in the situation that they are in? Or should we go about contacting a professional about them and have them reach out instead of our own self? How should we go about if we see domestic violence happening? But
I mean, if you see something happening
mhm,
or hear, maybe you don't really know that neighbor, but you're just
mhm,
like, they're yelling all the time, or something hit the wall, or, the child's crying. And again, the hair's going up on the back of your neck, call the police, let
mhm,
the police show up, get an eye on what's going on. But if it's someone that, you feel like you can talk to because this is your best friend or something, you can say, hey, do you want me to call the police for you? That's all part of that safety planning. A lot of these websites, you can start looking at the websites and they'll have like it'll say like a safe exit or emergency exit where you can hit that and it'll shut that site down because the perpetrator came home and you're on the computer. All you have to do is do that and it all shuts it down real fast. You're not trying to find the little button
mhm,
to turn it off, that kind of thing.
mhm.
um and then I'm not real positive because I haven't used those too much because again I worked within
Yeah.
the military, and especially because I was overseas, that um added another difficulty with some of those things. But I mean, just go on and Google, domestic violence and look at some of those hotlines and those things, and you'll see that they have some of those
For
safe
sure.
safe things. Um, but yeah, I mean, do an intervention, err on the side of
Mhm,
safety. I'd rather have an alive friend that's mad at me
mhm.
than a dead friend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And with all of this, and domestic violence and talking about family, children, diversity, and how cultures connect throughout this course that I've taken, how can we show empathy? Because that is like the main thing that we are trying to show through different topics that we chose for our final project. So, how can we show empathy towards those who are experiencing domestic violence?
Well, the one way is to be very honest with someone. I'm worried about you. I care about you. Well, why would you care about me? I'm just your neighbor 3 houses down. Because I'm a human being, because I hear your husband and you or your spouse or whatever fighting. I mean, just by showing empathy, you don't have to say that, but I mean, that's kind of the thinking behind it. But to just let somebody know, hey, I'm here. If you need anything, let me know. You know,
Mhm,
um, being supportive of causes. October, today is what, the 3rd? Oh, my
mhm,
battery is low. And so October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so wearing purple, wearing shirts about domestic violence, giving money to domestic violence charities, donating clothes to shelters, you know, those kinds of things are active things you can do if this is a cause that is important to you. And just letting somebody know, you know, hey, I'm going to tell you what I think you need to hear, not what you want to hear. You want me to tell you your spouse is really great and everything, and he or she may be in some areas, but that person's hurting you and you could die. So I need to intervene the most I can. I'm here for you.
Yes, for sure. Well, to conclude this interview, what would you say is the most important takeaway or important thing that you would want people to learn or know about domestic violence as a whole?
One, that it doesn't just stop. It's not usually a one-off thing. If a person does it once, they're probably going to do it again. Not always, but probably, and it will get worse because it gets easier with each episode. So there are ways of getting out, as painful and lonely and sad as it is, because when you're in a domestic violence situation, you hate being hurt, but you love the things that made you fall in love with that person. And that's a really hard thing to even out, to say, I love this person and I laugh with this person, I cuddle with this person, I have a, you know, sexual relationship with this person, I have children with this person, you know, whatever it is, and then have to leave that because that's the healthy and the right thing to do, because that person isn't being healthy at the moment. So to get a safety plan, to know how you're going to get out the next time it happens, and be there, or to be there for other people, and that this awareness is what's going to help bring this to a you know, to try to end domestic violence. I don't think it'll ever end. But the more people feel safe getting out of these situations and supported, especially if they're low income situations like you talked about, you know, that we've got to get these people out of these situations, but that it's got to also come from them.
For sure. Well, thank you for your time.
Sure.